Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Inside Guns with your host, me, the Yankee Marshal. Today, I want to talk about everybody's favorite little bobblehead, everybody's favorite dweeb, David Hogg. It seems he has put forth his list of demands for the upcoming administration, the new administration. And in those list of demands, he wants to actually create a new secretary position in the actual cabinet. He wants to create a Secretary of Gun Violence Prevention. Now, I want to talk today about whether that's a good idea or not. Now, I think most of us are going to say that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, especially since it came from David Hogg's mouth. And in a way, it is really stupid. Now, I'm going to try to be fair here, but it is really stupid because we know that if this kind of position was created, it wouldn't be a Secretary of Gun Violence Prevention. It would be the Secretary of Getting Rid of Firearms for Citizens. It would be a getting rid of the Second Amendment secretary is what it would be, because it would be done in a partisan way. You know, it'd be the Gabby Giffords or whatever her name, Gabby Giffords. I could never get her name right. Daffy Gifford, I don't know. But that's what it would be. It would be the how do we get rid of the Second Amendment? How do we violate people's rights? How do we lie and use propaganda and misinform people into thinking guns are the problem? Because they wouldn't deal with real issues. They would just demonize guns, demonize the tool. And they'd be like, well, if we got rid of guns, we wouldn't have so many people dying. And, you know, that's got to be true. Because no one ever died before guns, right? I mean, no one ever killed anyone with a rock or a pointy stick or a sword or a knife or a club or anything. Back in the day when there were no guns, everybody was equal, right? And everyone got to enjoy the same freedoms because there was no gun. Or was it kind of the absolute opposite? I think it was kind of the absolute opposite, wasn't it? I think people have been murdering each other since the beginning of time. With rocks and clubs and spears and swords and knives, etc. Taking away a crazy person's gun, so that they don't kill people is something that, they always try to put forward. What we're trying to do is take these crazy people's guns so they don't kill people. But the vast majority of people on guns aren't crazy. And the most reasons people die at the end of a gun barrel isn't because they ran into a crazy person with a gun either. That isn't the problem. There's reasons people die from gun violence. It's a lot of gang stuff. That's a big driver of the problem. I'm not going to solve that problem taking away legal guns because they're going to either get them illegally or they're going to just stab each other. We have quite a few stabbings in Portland between the gangs. We had a guy on a bus recently kill some people with a knife. So trying to pretend like guns being gone would solve problems doesn't really hold up. But you have to deal with the gang issues, because that's a big a contributor to violent acts with a firearm. You'd have to take care of crimes of passion. People who never have committed a crime in their life, but then commit a crime of passion because their ex-wife is marrying someone else, or their current girlfriend is having an affair, or their current boyfriend is getting, something like that. So you'd have to deal with that. That's not a crazy person with a gun. That's a person in extreme circumstances who makes a bad decision and commits a violent crime. But they don't have criminal records, so how are you going to prevent them from getting guns unless you just prevent everybody from having guns? So you can see where that leads to. Because when you're trying to deal with gangs, you can't determine who's going to end up being in a gang or who even is in a gang. Crimes of passion, you can't say, hey, this guy's stable now, but 2 years from now, his wife might cheat on him and he might go nuts. Can't do that. There's no way to put that into a law. So you're not going to be dealing with anything really, any problems. You're just going to be trying to strip guns away from people. Because if you really did want to stop gun violence, or at least reduce it, you're never going to stop it in a country that has any level of freedom. But if you wanted to reduce the number of people that die at the hands of other people, you'd have to do a lot of things differently, and it wouldn't be taking the guns away. Because when you take guns away, you just create more victims for the people who would take the lives of other people. And all of this being true, you still, just dealing with guns wouldn't deal with the number one reason people die at the end of a barrel. We've talked about different ways they die, gang members, crimes of passion, and there are criminals. There are crazy people that commit crimes, crazy people that go around and kill people, but they're a tiny little part of the puzzle. The number one thing you'd have to deal with if you had a Secretary of Gun Violence Prevention, his number one everyday job would have to be dealing with the number one cause of why people die from gun violence, and that is suicides. So what you would actually have is a secretary of suicide prevention. And now when you look at it that way, this is a guy who would be in charge of reducing gun violence deaths, people who die at the end of a gun, but he was doing it by dealing with the real problem, the biggest problem, which is suicides. Then I could be behind that. I could really support the idea of having a secretary for the prevention of suicides. Because that, I think, would do a wonderful thing in this country, would reduce our gun death rates by 60% if we reduced all the suicides. But, suicide's a separate topic. What I wanted to talk about is that Secretary of Gun Violence Prevention. That's a stupid idea. As usual, David Hogg gets it wrong. But for once, David Hogg has actually kind of a kernel of a good idea in there. What we really need is a Secretary of suicide prevention in this country, especially one that's centered on why so many veterans commit suicide, why so many elderly people commit suicide, etc. Then we'd have a real idea there. That might be something worth doing. Now, with that being said, let's actually talk about suicide prevention and suicides by gun. Well, the whole idea that, you could take care of the suicides by gun if you took the guns away, well, that's ridiculous. People can find other ways to commit suicide. If someone is dead set on taking their life, taking their gun is not going to stop them. Look at Japan. Their suicide rate is way higher than ours, and they don't have guns. They find a way. Are you trying to say Japanese people are more resourceful than Americans? I don't think so. It just shows you guns is not related. How many guns there are is not related to the suicide rate. That's true in most countries. Suicide rates are independent of gun ownership, and there's no definite correlation or causation there. So removing guns doesn't help solve suicides. What helps prevent suicides is treatment. Not stigmatizing mental illness, not treating soldiers like they're disposable when they come back with PTSD. Not letting elderly people languish alone somewhere. Because you'd be surprised how many people that commit suicide, it's elderly people who are just lonely. Or teenage people that just think life's not going to get better. Or soldiers who just can't live with what they've done or what they've seen. If we start dealing with those issues, because a lot of these issues could be taken care of with just therapy, counseling, treatment. Maybe sometimes you might have to have interventions to the level of committing someone to a place that it deals with making them better. And that's another thing. We have to treat mental illnesses as something we're trying to make better, not something as, now you're defective, so we just have to lock you up or put restrictions on you. Because here, let me tell you, I'm a mental health professional, or at least I used to be. And you never solve any of those problems. You never make one suicidal person feel better by showing up at their door with a sheriff and saying, we're taking your property, we've deemed you defective. That doesn't make anybody decide, I guess I can't kill myself. They came and took my guns. If anything, that would push a lot of people over the edge. That would increase the number of suicides. I can't believe any mental health professional would ever tell you that, taking away one specific tool will make sure they don't commit suicide, or even in any way contribute to the rate. Because it doesn't. There's no evidence of that, period. What there is evidence of, and that there's good knowledge of, and just basic good thinking towards, is that if you go into someone who has a mental health issue and you treat them as less than, you increase the chance that they're going to harm themselves. Now we're talking about suicides. I don't want to get everybody to get me wrong. I'm not totally anti-suicide. There's a lot of gray area there, even in suicides. I'm not whether you commit suicide, you're going to hell. No, I don't believe in hell. But I will say some suicides are justified. If you're someone who has a terminal illness, you've got weeks, months to live. And those weeks and months are going to be spent laying in your own filth in agonizing pain. And you know that. Taking your own life, to me, is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. It's a sign of, I'm going out on my own terms. I'm going to go out with some pride, not covered in my own shit, writhing in pain. So I have no problem with that. I have no problem with people who choose to end their life with dignity. If you have a moral or a religious objection to that, well, then here's a good idea. Don't do it. No one's going to make you do it. At least I would hope no one would ever make you do it. So if you have an objection to it, don't do it. But for some people, it's the right choice. But most suicides are just people that are in temporary situations, temporary states of mind, temporary bad circumstances that they think are long term, that they think that this is the way it's always going to be, or it's going to be this or worse. Whereas with a little counseling, a little peer counseling, a little therapy, maybe a little medication here and there, they could see things aren't like that always. They're not going to be like this forever. You're not broken. You're just in a bad situation. Let's get you through that bad situation. Does that bad situation require you to be able to sit weekly and talk to other people in your same situation? Do you require more care? Do you need to go in somewhere for inpatient treatment? Do you need to see a psychiatrist or a therapist? Do you just need to be medicated for an issue you have, anxiety, etc.? There's lots of things that can be done to help. So if we started dealing with that, if we started dealing with actual suicide rates, especially with teens, the elderly, and our veterans who come back with PTSD, that come back damaged, not broken, damaged. When something's damaged, that means we fix it. And mental health can often be fixed quite easily. You can be back to a situation where maybe you have a little bit of lingering issues, but for most part, you're a normal, everyday person. You understand that what you went through was transitory. What you did was either necessary, unavoidable, or just unfortunate. Just all kinds of things that you can come to a realization of, and that you can come to an acceptance of, and that you can realize my life is going to be better. My life is better. If we do those things, we'll reduce suicide rates drastically. There's lots of old people who could have would not take their life just because they had someone that came by once a week and made sure they needed something done around the house. If they, checked to see if they need anything done, or do you need me to go to the grocery store for you on Tuesdays and all this other stuff? Save a lot of lives there. A lot of teenagers, if they could just talk to people that have been in their situation when they were that age, and you know what? I laugh about it now, but back then, oh my God, I thought the world was ending. If we just did that, save a lot of teen lives. And if we started honoring our contract with our veterans, the ones that come back damaged because of the evils of war, well, then we'd save a lot of lives there too. So let's actually do something about gun violence and gun deaths in this country. Let's start doing something about suicides. Let's start dealing with people's mental health issues. Because if we do that, well, then we would drastically reduce the number of people who die at the barrel of a gun every year simply by letting them know they're not alone. All right, with all that gloom behind us here, now I want to move on to gun talk. And today I want to deal with a question I got from a viewer, which basically boils down to, even though it was like 3 paragraphs long, is it really worth it to go to 10 millimeter? Like if I have a 45 ACP or 45 AARP, as I like to call it, if I have a 45 AARP 1911 and I'm using it for carry for self-defense, is it really worth it to go to 10 millimeter? Because I talked very highly of the Ronin 10 millimeter recently, and they were like, should I change to that? Well, the answer to that question is it's up to you, actually. 45 is going to be a potent round, close range, person to person. I mean, I'm not going to say 45 is not going to sting a bit if you shoot someone with it. But 10 millimeter is better in every way, except for one. It's more powerful. You can get more in the gun. You get extra capacity. It's just, I think, a better round all the way around. Just better than 45. 45 is too slow. It's too big. It doesn't really perform ballistically as well as you would think it should for that size of a round. Penetration isn't that great. Deflection is bad. Just there's all kinds of bad things about 45 ACP. Not saying it's a bad round. It's just that there's areas it doesn't perform as well as other rounds do. And one of the rounds it doesn't perform as well as is 10 millimeter. 10 millimeter does pretty much everything better. So is it worth going from 45 ACP to 10 millimeter? Well, depends on your opinion of whether it's worth going from a good round to a great round. If you think it is, then yes, it's definitely worth it going to 10 millimeter. That's the short answer to the question. The short answer to the question is yes, it is worth it. Now, the only place I would say it isn't is if you're shooting suppressed. 45 ACP is better for shooting suppressed, but that's because it is so slow. It's subsonic, so that's why it's good for suppression. That doesn't make it best for performance. It just makes it better to be quiet. So is it worth it going from 45 ACP to 10 millimeter in a 1911 or any other gun? In my opinion, yes, it is. All right, I want to end the show today, as usual, with our viewer EDC. Our carrier of the day is Gunner G, but it's not Gunner G, it's his girlfriend, so he claims. And as you can see, she is carrying a VP9 SK and a pair of Greystone concealment leggings. Her HK VP9 SK in legging holsters. I've never actually even heard of leggings that have a holster built into them, mainly because I'm an actual man, always feel like a man, always feel 100% like a man, so I never have a reason to wear the leggings. Well, I always feel like 100% of a man unless someone has to like watch me throw a football. Then, not so much. But otherwise, I'm 100% man, so don't know anything about leggings or how women carry or the obstacles they face. Now I know they do face obstacles with outside waistband holsters because their hips are bigger. Well, I don't know if their hips are any wider than most people in the gun community are. Most men in the gun community have wider hips and bigger boobs than most women I know. But otherwise, they have issues. So this seems like a great way to carry me here. These Greystone concealment leggings look like a good idea. And he says she carries these when she goes hiking and running and works out great. Looks like it would work out great. Like I said, this is something a little different for me because like I just said, I don't usually have the women on here because I don't really have a lot of women viewers. And the only reason I'm questioning that this is a real woman is not because does it look like a woman? No, it looks like a real woman. It looks like an attractive woman, which makes me pretty sure, well, it couldn't be the actual girlfriend of one of my viewers. I've met a lot of my viewers, and the fact that they would have a girlfriend that actually looked like a real woman is more surprising and more unlikely to me than that this is just, an identity issue for Gunner G. But that being said, just wanted to show this because it's something I don't usually show, and I think it's a unique way for women to carry, or men, I don't know, I'm not going to judge, you might be into leggings too. But this here is Gunner G's girlfriend with her HK VP9 SK in her leggings holster. All right, everybody, that's another edition of Inside Guns with your host, me, the Yankee Marshal. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you come back tomorrow for our next episode. Until then, I just want to remind everyone that this channel is 100% viewer funded, so if you want to go over to patreon.com/the Yankee Marshal and become a patron of the channel, please do so if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, please don't do it. But if you can afford it, please do it. And if you want one of the patches and pins that are available right now, you have to do it in December. You have to go over and join before the end of December because those are all going away at the beginning of January. So go over now if you want to become a patron. And with that being said, I'll just sign off by saying, as far as the state of the world today is concerned, it is what it is. But if we all work together, we keep a level head, we focus on the things that are important, and we do the things we need to do, what things will be in the future is better.